This podcast may contain discussions of graphic violence, unsettling themes, supernatural phenomena, and other topics that some listeners may find disturbing or triggering. Listener discretion is advised. This podcast is intended for entertainment purposes only. The opinions expressed are simply those of the individual hosts and do not represent the profession of psychology or constitute professional advice. Hello and welcome back to the Secret Passage podcast.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
I was looking forward to this episode after we finished the Kasanoff episode, and then like the further we kind of dove in, the more I'm like, wow, this is heavy. This is heavy because it brings up a lot of course, personal things for me, and of course, I'm so looking forward to getting your perspective, Shannon, as someone who is not in sex work and who has never really been a consumer of pornography.
Mm-hmm.
But that said, before we dive in, let's talk about any secret passages we kind of walked down this past week.
I had a whole other secret passage lined up, but this morning, I think what I was rushing around this morning and trying to get ready for this, and I sat down and I was like, what am I going to eat? So what I had for breakfast was leftover lasagna and Girl Scout cookies. I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
I know. I'm like, so basically I'm showing up here today on coffee, Girl Scout cookies, leftover lasagna, and Lexapro. So I'm ready.
What kind of Girl Scout cookies?
Well, we have two kinds. Well, we had
Okay.
four kinds, but Tim took a bunch to work. So I ate the do-si-do. Well, no, I guess they're called, I forget what they're called. They're the shortbread ones.
Oh, okay.
But I was thinking, I was like, this is so funny. We all have these like secret food lives where I would never share this with people. And like I have all these gross, weird snacks that I eat. And I was thinking like at some point we could have a segment called Gross Snacks and we could just share with people like the weird, gross things we eat. Is there anything you eat for breakfast sometimes when you're rushing that you just would never even think to tell anyone about?
Um,
Or in general, like a gross snack or.
yeah. And of course, it's always when you're in a rush, right?
Mhm.
I'm trying to think of some things that I've eaten that were just weird. I mean, I've done the same as far as like, okay, so you had leftover lasagna.
Mhm.
I've had, in fact, yesterday morning, I ate leftovers, this like crock pot lemony chicken and rice thing that I
Yum.
make. Which is like, it's sort of like dinner for breakfast, right? Your lasagna was essentially you had dinner and dessert.
It's my favorite thing. I love dinner for breakfast.
Yeah, and we always hear about breakfast for dinner, which I've also made when I'm really excited about this griddle that I bought.
Ooh.
And it just makes the pancakes so perfect. I can do like eggs over easy on the griddle because it's like perfectly evenly distributed heat.
Ooh.
So yeah, but it actually doesn't strike me as that weird. I think weird is something like you grab like beef jerky, a handful of
Oh, I've done that.
chocolate pretzels, and you jump in the car. Yeah, for
Oh,
sure.
yeah.
That's more like weird.
Yeah.
You just had dinner for breakfast.
That's
So,
true. And dessert.
yes, dinner and dessert.
How about you?
So, for anyone, who follows me on social media, on Instagram specifically, I posted a picture of myself with Jordan Peterson because I went to see Jordan Peterson on the 25th of February. And I posted it because I was excited that I got to meet Jordan Peterson and his books, 12 Rules for Life, and We Who Wrestle with God, and what was the other one? Is it again something order? It's basically the companion piece to 12 Rules for Life. Those books are life changing.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to agree with everything someone says. There's certainly some things that I don't agree with, but I would be remiss if I didn't say that a lot of his lectures and those books specifically were life-changing. And I was greeted with a combination of positive, kind of like, oh, cool. And of course, a lot of people who assume if you like anything that Jordan Peterson has ever said or done
You're
or
a
written,
fascist.
then you're a terrible person. And
Mm.
so I have a kind of complicated relationship with social media. If I wasn't in the public space at all, I wouldn't use it. It's sort of a necessary evil in terms of promotion. And I honestly, I unless I'm posting pictures of my dogs or cats, I
Hmm.
don't read the comments.
Hmm. Good for you.
I was a little, I glanced and I saw some vitriol and I said, you know what? I'm a kind of a public figure, and my comment section is open, and what people's opinions are of me, it's none of my business. I put it out there. I put it out there in part because I wanted to invite some folks to kind of, first of all, share kind of like maybe their experiences with 12 rules for life or we who wrestle with God. And I had one woman that I follow her and she follows me, and she sent me a DM saying how 12 rules for life was like kind of life changing for her, and that's what I wanted.
Hmm.
I also I don't want to hide. I think it's weird that we
Yeah.
live in a time where you like something that someone has written, or you agree completely or partially with someone's belief system, and you're in, kind of made into like a social pariah or whatever. And I'm going to be 53 this year, and I'm like, what am I hiding from? Is this a thing where I don't want to ever be say anything controversial, which is sort of ironic because my entire career is controversial.
Hmm.
But so anyway, it was an interesting kind of fascinating experiment in a way, just to post it. I was just happy. I was happy to be able to shake his hand and say, "Hey, it's an honor because you've written some stuff that has gotten me through some hard times, regardless of how I feel about his perspective on
Like trans
gender
issues or
politics,
yeah.
trans issues, or things like
Hmm.
that. You don't have to agree with everything."
Right.
Um,
Oh, you're not ideologically pure.
no, exactly.
Yeah.
So that was sort of this interesting sort of moment. So I guess note to any listeners that are gonna write off this podcast because I just said that I went to see Jordan Peterson. Thanks for having stopped by, I guess. Um, Thanks for being absolute. So anyway, that was my fucking dark ass secret passage that I kind of I thrust myself through that passageway, and I'm glad I did.
I'm glad you did too. I thought it was really brave. Honestly, like we liberal minded people, like if you're truly liberal minded, you welcome other perspectives and ideological diversity and arguments and ideas going back and forth. And I just thought it was like a move in the direction of sanity. Like, and also you guys had like matching outfits. It was very monochrome magic. It was like him in all white, you in all black.
He actually had. Oh, I'm trying to remember. He had this. Well, first of all, he's incredibly like he's the best suits.
Yeah.
Um,
He's so
I
handsome.
always opt. Yeah, I always opt for black.
Hmm.
And I was also freezing. The theater was so cold. I'm always cold though. I'm at that stage of my life where I'm like, I can't believe how late it is. I can't believe how cold it is.
Yeah, no, I thought it was great. And I was really like, I told you this already, but like, I was reading the comments and I was just shocked at how many people just came on there to yuck your yum. I'm like, you were not making any statements. You were just clearly very happy. Your face was so cute, like you were smiling really big, and um, just people coming on there just to like poop on it. And I was like, wow, like on him, and all the ad hominem attacks, like he's a, you know, whatever, a bad person, or it's just and then I also loved all the comments of people just supporting, us being able to talk about what do you talk being able to come out
Yeah,
with, maybe heterodox views. There's a place for heterodox views, and you don't have to always be so ideologically aligned. That whole consensus thing around ideology is kind of frightening in general to me. um, but anyway, I digress. Shall we start our thingy?
absolutely. Absolutely. So this, oh gosh, hang on a second. Waiting for Poochie to get settled. Um, so this episode is, we're here to talk about uh, Lily Phillips, mainly Lily Phillips, and her, I guess, friend, right? Her colleague,
Her frenemy.
her frenemy, um, Bonnie Blue, and both of them are OnlyFans models. They're I guess you could say they're essentially at this point. I mean, you could call them porn stars. They make pornographic content for the OnlyFans or on the OnlyFans platform, and well, Lily Phillips is a 23-year-old former Sheffield University student from Derbyshire, England. She dropped out of university to pursue a full-time career as an OF content creator performer, and eventually dropped out of university after she saw how much money she was actually making and could potentially make on the platform. She sort of, I guess it was the logical next step for her, right? She's making more money than a lot of cosmetic surgeons. I mean, and millions.
Mm-hmm.
And her, Josh Peters made a documentary about her, primarily about her stunt that she did on OnlyFans a few months ago, where she had sex with 100 fans in the course of a day.
Ow.
And Josh Peters followed along as she prepared for this event, and he interviewed her, and you know it's actually a really good documentary. It's available on YouTube for anyone who has not seen it. But he asked her, well, what made you decide to like do OnlyFans? And she said, well, I'm being a slut anyway. Could thought I could make a little bit of money. And this is a common refrain in the documentary. Well, I'm promiscuous. At one point, she even says, I'm just good for one thing, honestly. And she describes herself as an English cunt.
Mm-hmm.
And it just keeps going. And it's I saw it as branding.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of saw it as her kind of branding. She's incredibly business savvy. He in the documentary says, "Would you consider yourself like a businesswoman?" She goes, "Oh, no, no." And I think that's when she's like, I'm good for one. I'm really only good for one thing. But she is. She has 8 employees, and she has a whole spreadsheet on her computer, and
Her mom does her accounting.
which is insane. It's I had That's a whole other fucking conversation. But she's very, very savvy. But I think she's hyper conscious throughout the documentary of the fact that that this is a documentary, that she is being recorded, and I think she's very careful. I mean, I think there is some sincerity as far as her. She's incredibly polite and very friendly, and I think that's real. And then she's overwhelmed after she completes the stunt.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't even call it a gangbang because it's just like one after the other. It's more of like a kind of a revolving door. she she's definitely overwhelmed by the experience, was not prepared. I mean, she even Josh Peters is sort of surprised at how she flies out of town to go to some event like the day before, is running behind schedule. And I think that's a testament to her just being really young,
Hmm.
maybe a little arrogant even at just what this whole undertaking is going to entail.
Yeah, it seems like they had like logistics and operations issues.
Which, of course, when you're dealing with 100 strangers,
Yeah,
you know,
right.
there's gonna be some issues. And then, and of course, with anything that involves so many kind of variables, a lot of safety precautions are going to fall through the fall through the cracks. She did not. What One thing that's frightening is she had no idea that HIV could be transmitted orally. There's something she just was kind of not clued in on, and didn't really seem appropriately nervous, I
Hmm.
suppose,
Hmm.
at that. And so, you know, she kind of broke down, after the experience, and sort of admitted that she kind of dissociated about 30 people in, which is just, as somebody who's, done sex work for as long as I have, dissociation is very, very, it's self-preservation, and it's very common and necessary. But she then, after, shortly after the whole thing, announced that she was going to do 1,000 people next,
Mm.
which her pal Bonnie Blue beat her to the punch,
Yeah.
and did like 1,057 or something like that. Which again, they're not even sure if that's accurate, if that's possible.
Yeah, I don't think the math works, but
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So I have a lot of thoughts about this. I'm curious to know, Shannon, what your thoughts are as somebody who is, sort of on the outside, not a consumer of pornography, not in the sex industry at all. What it was your take?
Mm. Well, so both Bonnie and Lily they look like fresh-faced sorority girls
Yes, they do.
and like extremely, like extraordinarily beautiful, like really pretty, middle class, white. Uh, and what my first thought was like in film school when we were talking about the evolution of film, uh, my teacher in my avant-garde cinema class was talking about how when the technology of the video camera came, that it really put filmmaking back in the hands of the people, because anyone could just make a movie. And it made me think about the intersection of like technology and how things develop, right? And so, um, you know, OnlyFans really put the porn industry into people's hands in a way that they could make money from it. You know what I mean? Like anybody could have made a sex video with their phone or their camera, video camera, but could you make money with that? Could you monetize it? And I think it really wasn't until OnlyFans came around that that was possible. Yeah.
No, so
Or is there?
it came around with the advent of the video camera,
Mhm.
camcorder, really.
Okay. But like really having a platform, really like being able to have all these fans, being able to turn it into a business feels like it's facilitated by something like OnlyFans, right? Or no?
So so here's something interesting.
Hmm.
So the video market
Hmm.
really made it possible for anyone with a camcorder
Yeah.
and a couch and a wall,
And a penis and a vagina.
exactly, could make money,
Okay.
make good money. What OnlyFans and what I guess the kind of the boom of like the internet, and websites and stuff is, and I'd go so far as to say even more than that, the smartphone.
Hmm.
And also that, OnlyFans is a reaction to the tube sites and the porn piracy,
Mm,
because it gutted the porn industry. It gutted
mm,
the porn industry. And what OnlyFans and things like ManyVids, Clips for Sale, these other kinds of platforms has done is it sort of made it possible to go direct to consumer, direct to provider in a
mm-hmm.
way, because what the fans have is access to
Yes.
their like favorite performers, whereas like with video, you had you still had companies.
Uh-huh.
You could also be your own distributor. I mean, it was a time when porn wasn't so easily accessible.
Yes.
You still had to go to like shops to get videotapes or like have them sent to you, or if you were brave enough to like go into a just a video store and go to the adult section to rent, then that's what you did. But with the internet came the tube sites, and that is what has made it hard for a lot of these porn companies to exist. They're being absorbed by big companies like Gamma and stuff, or they're just folding completely. Because you've got these girls and guys starting OnlyFans pages and making money, and a
Mm-hmm.
lot of these fans, they can go directly to their favorite performer and request custom videos
Mm-hmm.
or different things like that. And so that's, for better or worse, I mean, that's sort of what has happened. I mean, in some ways you could look at it as, because it used to be, and it still is to some degree, you have performers, you have people that come into the industry, and they go and they start performing in scenes, and depending on their rate, like let's say they're going to do a sex scene with a guy,
Mm-hmm.
and they go to set, and what they're being paid is like $1,000 for that scene. Well, that scene is going to make the company millions of dollars. The performer only got $1,000, and
Mm-hmm.
and the reason, or a lot of, in the past, the justification was, they're getting paid that amount, but they're getting the exposure and the opportunity to earn more money down the line, either through contracts, through meet and greets, touring, like strip club touring and stuff like that, would sort of make up for the fact that they only got paid a scene rate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nowadays, a lot of performers, they'll come in and they want to perform for companies like Brazzers or Vixen or things like that, to build up their name so that they can amass a big following on OnlyFans.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's sort of like that's kind of how it is now.
Mm-hmm.
And you could see it as a great for the talent, because they can sell, when they shoot specific content for their site, they can sell the clips over and over and over again. So in a way, they've become their own studio. They
Mm-hmm.
become their own company,
Mm-hmm.
and they're the ones that are making the money, minus the whatever 20% that goes to the platform. So
Got it.
that's sort of how it is now.
Yeah, it's like you could be a boss babe or something. Like it makes, when I think of Bonnie Blue and I think of her, of Lily Phillips, like my initial thing is sort of like, right, they're like sort of like in porn influencers, like they're this hybrid of like normies, business late women, entrepreneurs, influencers, and there's like, the first thought I had really though was like when I watched that documentary was, so I'm just going back to your original question, but
Sure.
is I was just shocked at the absence of a disgust response, like, and like anxiety or shame. Like I just thought, you know, it was really gross, that scene. There was a scene after she had had sex with 100 people where there was just condoms laying all over the ground, and the things they say, like, oh, I like them to like come on my face or dump the condom out onto my face. I've earned it and stuff like that. I'm like, and I think, I'm like, wow, most people, and they talked about the smell in the room and how it stunk. And I
Oh,
was
the
just,
cameraman like retched. Like I don't know if he actually vomited, but he almost did.
yeah. And I'm like, I just, it's interesting to watch her walk around so gracefully, looking like, if I think about, whenever I think of her and Bonnie Blue, I think of like West Elm or CB2 or Crate and
J.
Barrel.
Crew. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like you know, they're doing these things that are like actually just like evoke a disgust response in most people. Not to judge them. I'm not judging them and saying, but like foreign people's fluids all over your face for most people would be like even spit, anything, like a sneeze in your face. Like most of these things really cause like a very reflexive disgust response. And I'm like, where is hers? Like she has none. And so I just was like, do these people have a different nervous system than the rest of us? That was my first initial thought. But tell me more about you, what you.
This is possibly where her disgust response went. I'm going to share a little story about my own personal experience with gross stuff, because I've done quite a few disgusting things in my career. One of them was a scene. It was an anal scene with Adriana Chechik and Roxy Ray, both really great girls, and it was a lot of pushing lube out of our butts and into each other's mouths, and just gaping buttholes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I apologize to any listeners out there who are like gagging right now. If you're eating, I apologize. But it was a lot of that, a lot of just disgusting, gross stuff. And I can say it was disgusting and gross because it is. I was describing it actually to a friend of mine when I after the scene, the director asked us, he's like, what are you guys gonna do now? Like we finished fairly early, like big plans, and Chechik was like, I got to jump on a plane, go to New York, and I said I would probably, I feel like I need to take an antibiotic and try not to shit myself on the way home, uh,
Mm-hmm.
because that is kind of how I felt, and I was describing this to a friend of mine who was formerly a contract girl, had never really done any gross scenes before, and she goes, "How did you keep from throwing up?" And I told her I dissociated.
Yep.
I kind of just went outside myself and just was a physical body going through the motions. And you can shut down quite a bit when you need to. I mean, dissociating and shutting down is what you do when you're being raped, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that's what we do. It's what I did to get through a lot of scenes.
Mm-hmm.
Just being completely honest. Not every scene, not every scene, but a lot of them. So I'm not saying that is what Bonnie and Lily do to get through scenes, but there is, you can shut down that disgust response when you have to do something,
Yeah.
when you have to get through it, you know
Yeah. Also, when it hurts your image if you show it.
that is, and when you've got millions of dollars, like when you've got dollar signs in your eyes, you'd be surprised what you can do. You think about people kill for smaller amounts of money.
Yeah.
So taking a load to the face, or insisting that you have earned cum for your face or chest or things like that, or this is all stuff we'll never know. I mean, maybe down the line we will, maybe both of them will sort of have a moment of reckoning where they kind of look back and reflect on some of this, and can speak, honestly. Again, not saying that they're not telling the truth and that they don't fucking love everything that they're doing. I have a hard time believing it, but I don't think we really know them. I
Yeah.
think we know what they want us to know.
Yeah. And it's a tightly curate. Such a curated.
Very, 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 very much so. They are, when you look at Bonnie and the way she talks and the things that she says she's preoccupied with, it's all metrics. It's all like the most searched terms on Pornhub, MILF, older women, younger men, like these kinds of things. Like it's all the hashtags, the search terms, the most searched, the most, the top selling clips are all kinds of it's all their language. It's all the way they describe themselves. It's not real. It's all manufactured. I always come back to this quote. I know that I've repeated it to you over and over again, but it definitely came up for me when we were had talked about covering this topic. And the quote is, the occupational hazard of making a spectacle of yourself over the long haul is that at some point you buy a ticket too.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a quote from Thomas McGuane from his book Panama. And that's the thing, when we are making spectacles of ourselves, at a certain point you see yourself,
Yeah.
and you see the consequences of your actions. And I include myself in this. Like I'm not sitting over here like clutching any kind of pearls when I see these girls. I know why they do it. I'm less interested in why it is that they have that they have these OnlyFans accounts, and why they do the things they do. They understand,
Yeah.
this is all has been very lucrative for them. I'm more interested in how we got here,
Yeah.
and how we got to a point where you've got these 23-year-old young women wanting this, wanting this life, and seeing it as empowering.
Yeah. And enticing, and that might, yeah, that along with that, like the social piece is like normalizing it and possibly recruiting other women to think that this lifestyle is like easy, worth it. You know what I mean? They make it look so easy. They make it look like there are no repercussions. Yeah, and that's the part that I'm interested in too. Like, what's the impact, the larger impact?
Yeah, it's thinking about it, because of course I have an OnlyFans, and so it feels weird to sit here and talk about it when I have one.
Yeah.
But I've been, and as you know, I've been incredibly conflicted about my very long career as a pornographer.
Yeah.
And so, to be fair, I kind of, bought into the whole idea of that sex work was empowering,
Mm-hmm.
that I was sort of I had my own agency, that I was progressive, all that kind of stuff. Because to be able to do this job, to be able to show up for work each day, I
Mm-hmm.
had to believe it, even when my instincts told me otherwise. You know,
Mm-hmm.
for example, a long time ago, not that long ago, I'd say 2006, which is, I don't know, is that a long time ago, Shannon? It is
I
and it
guess
isn't.
so. It's like 20 years ago almost.
I went to Hungary to shoot a movie as a director. And I remember that I needed to go find talent. And so I was given, I was taken to this one, studio, this agency. And, girls showed up, and I would ask them, okay, what kind of scenes do you do? Which means, like, do you do anal scenes? Do you only do vaginal scenes? Do you only do girl girl? Do you do that kind of thing? And so they come in, and I'd meet them, and they would tell me, okay, well, I do these kinds of scenes. I'm like, okay, thank you. And then I went to another agent's agency. It wasn't an agency. It was a guy's house, and there
Mm-hmm.
were girls sitting around on couches. And I came into the room, and they all immediately lined up and took off all their clothes. And I was really uncomfortable
Mm-hmm.
because it felt like I went to a pimp's house.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of like Here we are in Eastern Europe, and I'm seeing this, and it's different. It's different in the States. It's different in Los Angeles. It's different in the kind of world that I was in within the porn industry in Los Angeles. And there was one girl in particular that we were keen to shoot. Beautiful girl, barely spoke English. And so she showed up to do the scene, and I found out that she was 18. Her boyfriend was the agent.
Mm.
She had lost her virginity to him, and then he immediately turned her out to do scenes, right? And after the shoot, I went to pay her, and she said, "No, no, no," And then she said her boyfriend's name. Give the money to him. And I said, You're the one who did the scene. I'm giving the money to you. If you want to give the money to him, you can. So I was incredibly uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
The shoots were everyone did fine, whatever. And my partner at the time was like, "Hey, this is it's just different here." And I'm like, "I get that, but I feel like I have no idea if any of these girls were trafficked. I have no idea if any of these girls actually wanted to do the job.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some people who would tell me, well, if you say that they were forced into it, you're denying their agency. They were there. They said they wanted to be there. You have to believe them."
Ugh, but like, forget about coercion of any kind.
I just it's there were certainly some girls there that I got the impression that they were, seasoned veterans,
Mm-hmm.
and they seemed fine. I don't know, but there were definitely a few that I'm not so sure. I was not comfortable. This 18-year-old girl, her boyfriend is, her agent,
Mm.
and then she's immediately doing scenes after she loses her virginity to him. That makes me uncomfortable. I don't know.
Right. Quote unquote agent.
Yeah, but that's been essentially my entire career has been overlooking these things. There's a lot of I feel like there's a lot of stories we tell ourselves in my line of work to
Mm-hmm.
make it bearable.
Right.
And
Does it feel like at the time when you were going through it, I know you were having these moments, right? Of like, this is weird. This is like, this doesn't, the cognitive dissonance piece. But do you feel like you were, like, it was like a willing compromise in order to sort of like be able to make it all make sense and move forward? Or did it feel more like repressing it or ignoring it or downplaying it? You know what I mean? It's a subtle difference, but like, mhm.
yeah, so in the book, there's
Mhm.
there's this book, the Case Against the Sexual Revolution, which, you know, some listeners may hear that book and then go, "Oh, I'm writing this whole thing off. It's too it's not progressive enough. It's too conservative." And I don't agree with everything that Louise Perry says in the book. I don't agree with everything, but there are some things that she says that ring absolutely true, which is there's no such thing as ethical porn.
Yeah.
And as someone who has made porn for a very long time, I agree with that. This notion of feminist porn it's sort of a misnomer, because porn is made for the male gaze. The men still, you know, account for the bulk of porn consumption almost entirely, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to make money in this business of manufactured intimacy, you've got to make the porn that people want to see.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, it's a business, you know. But when you make bodies, when you make human bodies, products,
Mm-hmm.
shit's gonna get dark, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah. Tell me. So when she talks about, like, that's so interesting because your email address used to be ethically questionable, right?
yes, that was that was because of my line of work.
Yeah.
So even back then, I've had that email address forever. Even back then, I was really kind of struggling.
Yeah. So like when she goes into and I'm curious about your thoughts too. Like what I mean I feel this may be obvious to people, but I'm curious what you when you think about how it's unethical, what you think is unethical about it and her too.
Oh,
I
sure.
haven't finished the book. I just started it. It's really good though.
So things are very complicated when you have, how do I put this? I think it's unethical for the consumer, and I think it's unethical for the performer.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I understand there are a lot of people. Most of the people that I know in the industry are here willingly. They were not trafficked. They were not coerced. They came and they see themselves as entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
And most of them, the ones that I know, are perfectly fine people.
Mm-hmm.
But how do I put this? It's a business where I'm going to go back to the moment I realized I'm like, this is, I actually do have a problem with this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry if I'm being inarticulate. I'm like trying
No,
so
no, no.
hard to,
This is great.
I'm like wrestling with this whole thing. I'm still in this business. I'm part way out, but I'm still in it. And I wrestle with so much.
Yeah, and do you want me to tell you something so interesting about this? Like, this is what
What?
my consultant always tells me. Like, when I'm working with clients and they come and they tell me a story and it just sounds so fluid, so perfect, they don't stumble over their words. That tells you that it's like rehearsed, right? And that that's a story that they've been long telling themselves. And then when people are forming new connections and making sense of things in a new way, that it's like this, like how you're talking about it. And you're not incoherent at all. It's like I can hear the thinking. Like that it's not just a like, you hear Lily Phillips and you hear Bonnie Blue talking and it's like, "Oh yeah, I'm just a hoe. I've always been a hoe since college, blah blah blah." It's just so there's no, it's just a story. It's rolling tape. But like
Sure.
you talking about this now is like it's like part of your process of making sense of your past and the present and the future, right?
Yes.
And so it's new and it's, yeah. And so stumble away, my friend. Take your time.
I got my knee pads on and my helmet and my elbow pads. I'll get right back up after I fall. Um, yeah. So things changed for me,
Mm-hmm.
like really changed for me when I had kids. I have three sons, and I was asked once, and I had stopped performing at the point that I had my kids, and was directing, and really didn't think I'd return to performing. But my marriage ended, and it was the thing that was the most lucrative that I could go back to, the easiest, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, I had this mindset of like, I'm this liberated woman, I'm a feminist, I'm, all of the things, and let's destigmatize sex work, blah blah blah. And I was asked once, I think it was an interview. I don't know that it ever came out. I don't. I just remember being asked this. So maybe it was even off the record. I might have even asked them to take it off the record. I'm not sure. But I was asked, what would you do if your kids grew up and wanted to follow in your footsteps, or go into porn? And my response was, if that's what they wanted to do, then it means I failed as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
And right there, my immediate response. I didn't even think. I just answered that. And that was the truth. That was the truth, because I realized if I don't want my kids to grow up and enter into this world, then there's something wrong with this world, like fundamentally wrong with this world.
Yeah. And like, why is it okay for you? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've watched young men come into this business and, struggle to perform because it's not natural, right? To fuck a stranger, a girl that you don't know, or maybe you do, whatever. In front of a crew of people,
Mm-hmm.
to do all the positions that they want you to do, the positions that work best, for their metrics, whatever, and watch them fail and be humiliated,
Mm.
and run the risk of never being hired because they failed. And so their failure to produce the thing that the company needs, to sell the
Mm-hmm.
product, it's weird. It's weird, right?
Mm-hmm.
Of course they failed. Of course they failed, because that's weird,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not natural, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've watched young men, take their hearts are racing, their faces are turning red, because they've taken a, what is it, the drug to help.
Like Viagra.
Viagra, yeah, Viagra, Cialis, all that. So you've got these young men with perfectly, normal testosterone. They've got, under normal circumstances they'd be fine, but they have to take this stuff to be able to do this job, to collect a check. Even worse, I've seen young men, barely 23, 24 years old, using Trimex, injecting the base of their dicks to
Mm-hmm.
get it hard to do this job, which is terrible for you. So they're destroying their bodies to produce something that really we'd survive. If porn disappeared tomorrow, we'd be fine. We're still gonna propagate the species. We're
Yeah.
hardwired to.
Yeah.
It's an absolutely worthless business. It really is. I'm saying this, and I am running the risk right now of my OnlyFans disappearing, and I guess I'll just fucking figure it out. But it is absolutely, it's worthless.
That's a really, how I told you the other day that I don't, I don't care what this book with Louise Perry. I feel like it's so exciting when someone has some like moral conviction or a clear view on something. And I don't know, to hear you say that is, first of all, it's like very courageous to say it, given, that this is your bread and butter. Um, and also like it feels very like genuine, like true for what you really believe. Uh and right, like I think of porn and I think of all the other like alcohol and everything. It's like it's only exists so people can indulge their sort of, I guess, dopamine system, or what was she saying? She said something else in the book,
Oh,
but
does she? Well, I mean, it was brilliant. She describes pornography in the same way that fast food or McDonald's. It's limbic capitalism.
mm,
It's you're making money off of these things that are not nutrient dense.
yeah.
It's really just, and you're kind of buying into like the sort of addictive components, that we have. So like, the chemicals they put in the fries at McDonald's that sort of like activate that kind of addiction response. And then with pornography, it's a similar thing. The things that they study. Then there's a whole like, kind of algorithm, to what works, and you keep repeating what's working, what's selling.
uh,
And that studies have been done that, there's a desensitization that does happen when you're watching porn, that you keep having to look for more and more base shit.
More, yeah, more and more stimulation. And yeah, you're right. Like it's not only that, and McDonald's is a perfect example. It's like it's not only that it's addictive, it's like it's actually bad for you.
Yeah.
I didn't know people. This is I was thinking about this earlier because I knew we were going to end up talking about this, but it's like I look at people who are like, how I am with my drinking. I'm doing like the 90-day sobriety thing now, and drinking is my thing that I'm like I have cognitive dissonance about. I'm like, this is poison. This is a neurotoxin, and it's fun. But there are normies out there I'm going to ask you what you think about this. Like when I hear people talking about alcohol or cocktails or wine, and there are people who don't get entangled in it. Like they just don't have enough exposure. They drink only rarely. They don't look at it the same way. And so I was thinking about porn, and I was like, is there, yeah, like our relationship to these things? Like some people get complete, their lives get turned upside down, their relationships get ruined, they have an addiction to porn. And then some people, they're like, I dabble. And so it doesn't have this sort of effect that,
Sure.
um, but even so, it's like, what's the point? Is that kind of what you're saying? Like,
Yeah,
mhm.
and lest anyone think that I'm for like the abolition of pornography. I'm too much of like basically like a libertarian about the whole thing. Like of course not. Like, that never
Yeah,
worked, right? We're not going to get rid of it. I guess my concern is just that how I think it's more of a cultural thing.
yeah,
It's become so normalized, and attitudes about, and this again goes into this whole idea of hookup culture, and this culture of kind of meaningless sex,
yeah.
because that leads us right back into this, these we've gotten so far away from like real intimacy. My oldest son has a few friends that are like, they can't wait to be 18 so that they can get Tinder accounts.
Uh huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And bless his heart, for that. Maybe it's ironic that, as such as a pornographer, who was married to another pornographer,
Hmm.
we somehow produced children that have zero interest in pornography. And it could be that they're, for my oldest anyway, it's like, why would he even look on Pornhub? He's going to see people he used to see at Thanksgiving.
Right.
He doesn't want to see these people. He doesn't want to see his mother or his father, especially his father, all over the place. There is just never even a passing curiosity about pornography.
Yeah.
But so thankfully that was the outcome. But we both sent you that recording talking about like finding dates or boyfriends or girlfriends or whatever online. And his
Hmm.
thing was like, he goes, I just think it's weird. I think it's weird. Like, I just I'm not going to know that. Like, he wanted to be able to kind of have an organic experience of like meeting someone, you
Hmm.
know, talking to them in person,
Hmm.
exchanging numbers and getting to know them and all that kind of thing. But, we are in a society now that largely benefits men, really, with kind of scrolling through these apps and looking at pictures of people and then clicking on them. And essentially it's like DoorDash, but for human beings, for sex. And
Yes.
and I think that culture, and also we're such a hypersexual culture as well, and we've learned that sex can sell everything from shoes to gum to alcohol to
Perfume.
cars. And we also have this odd kind of entitlement, in we're all consumers, but this idea that we deserve the best, we deserve better than, we're entitled to stuff and things, and a more attractive girlfriend, a more attractive boyfriend, like that kind of thing. And it all kind of feeds into this idea of that kind of instant gratification, and that we are kind of just this collection of body parts. And I don't know, it's
Right.
we've gotten to a point where we objectify ourselves now. We now anyone can become everyone wants to be an influencer, so they create these accounts, and kind of put themselves like scantily clad or in the most flattering pictures, but they're sexualizing themselves, they're objectifying themselves, for clicks, likes, and then financial gain. And of course, Lily Phillips and Bonnie Blue are putting themselves out there. Of course they are. And of course they're willing to up the ante every single time if it means amassing more and more money and validation, you know?
Yeah, it's such a, I was just thinking about human behavior. Um, well, first of all, let me go back to this whole thing about like branding. I have a consultant who's like in her 70s, and she said she was dry. She was not a native, of technology, and obviously, and older than us. And she was driving one day and she saw this billboard about, create your brand. And she's like, I'm a brand now. And I see it with therapists too. It's like everybody's trying to have a brand. I'm like this kind of thing, especially on TikTok. And um, it's, it's a very, I understand that it's marketing, right? And like, that's fine. But there's some, yeah, it's quite, it feels narcissistic. It's like, well, it's a very human need or desire, right? To be seen, to be heard, to be known, to be understood, to feel important, to get, and all of this is like geared toward like hooking our dopamine system, right? Like even just personal posting is like the likes and the how much attention did my post get, and it hooks us. And I feel like we're just collectively hooked into this bizarre culture of, look at me, and how can I monetize that? um,
It always
because
comes
I'm like,
back to the
yeah,
almighty dollar.
right, and right, Bonnie Blue and Lily Phillips are masters at this because they've cornered a different kind of market, and they've also distinguished themselves from others by doing these wild, what'd you call them again? Stunts.
Stunts.
Yeah, and then together, I think also like they've used their their friendship and their competition. So it's like competitive, porn sports or something. Like they've used that to get more attention. And then Bonnie, like negative attention, positive attention, it doesn't matter. Like Bonnie is the one who's sort of like the meaner of the two, the one that's kind of like screw you middle class ladies. Like that's her big thing is like
Hmm.
middle,
I'm
it's always
fucking your
middle
husbands.
and your sons. And
Yes.
it's like what I hate the most about it is it's total rage bait, and it works for her. But she does that thing where this thing that she does. Ugh, I don't know if you've heard her do this, but she got these women tried to like block her from coming back home to Australia because she lives in Australia. And so
Hmm.
they signed some petition to not let her back into the country. And I don't even know if she was able to go back into the country. But these were women who were worried about her sleeping with their sons. And she has this whole shtick where she says to women, well, if you're not going to pleasure your husband, I will. Better I do it than somebody else, on the street or whatever. Um, and it's just she sets up this like adversarial relationship between her and other women. Like she's going to swoop in and fill the gap of all
Right.
you sexless women, you know?
Right.
Um, and it's just, it's like, I don't know, it feels like an attack on like women with natural libidos, like
Right.
that as we age definitely shift and all that stuff. But it's, I keep thinking like, yeah, talk to me when you're 55, you know? Um,
Well, it's also, again, if we're going to talk about branding, another big search term on porn sites is cheating.
mm,
So she's fetishizing, like it's part of her brand. Like,
mm-hmm.
she's just, it is that thing. It's boosting her engagement. All of this is manufactured. All of
Yeah.
it. It reminds me of this sort of on topic, off topic. Have you heard about the? Let me look. I wrote it down. Patriarchy Hannah.
No.
Okay, it's this woman who is this like trad wife like supposedly had like I don't know something a ridiculous number of children, and it's like I don't know, churning her own butter like on social media, on X I guess primarily,
Mm-hmm.
and would just go on and on about very anti-feminist, very like women need to serve their husbands, blah blah blah. She's traditional. She would it came out, and it was like so like I want to say like a maybe several years. I'd have to look into it. I just saw this kind of, I guess, expose about it on TikTok
Mm-hmm.
briefly, but it came out that it was all a lie.
Mm.
She doesn't really exist. She's this single woman who has a like a I don't know if she has an OnlyFans or some sort of porn account geared towards like it's called BBW, Big Beautiful Women. It's like women that are heavy, like
Mm-hmm.
overweight.
Mm-hmm.
So she was like making overweight woman content, not married. The images she was posting were like pulled from the internet, the supposed house, that's all this stuff. It was
Wow.
all fake. The whole
Wow.
thing was fake. People were buying it hook, line, and sinker. There were people supporting it. Then there were people who were offended by it, and none of it was fucking real.
Wow.
So it's crazy what goes on. And that's why, like, yeah, with the Lily Phillips and the Bonnie Blue, like 90% of the shit they say, I take with a grain of salt. It's
Right.
they're making money. They wouldn't be doing any of this if it wasn't lucrative.
Yeah,
You're
even
not
the
going to
non.
fuck 100 strangers for free. Oh, it turns me on. I just love their big cocks. Like, no,
I
none of that's
know.
fucking real.
I know, and that's the thing. I mean, is that part of the danger is that porn and like this kind of thing, it people do it's like not all porn is real. No porn is real, maybe.
No.
Maybe some porn is real. But yeah, like this idea of this the size of their libido, like, and what they enjoy and how many times. Like, it's not possible to sleep with 1,054 men in one day. It's just not. You have to go to the bathroom. You have to, like, so yeah. So is that part of the danger, is that it distorts people's, I mean, and that's what they say, it distorts people's view around sex and sexuality and intimacy.
Yeah. I'm going to go so far as to say, and this is one of the things, the argument that sex work is work, and that we need to destigmatize it and all that kind of stuff, is it ignores the fact that that sex is special, and that it is different than other kind of social interactions, right? And Louise Perry makes an excellent point in her book, and that is that obviously sex is different and special, because if a landlord looks at a potential female tenant and says, rather than pay rent, if you have sex with me, you can live here. That in lieu of payment, why don't we have sex? Is
Mm-hmm.
is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
If sex work is work, then why is that wrong? If
Exactly.
if 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 a boss can look at a female employee and say, if you give me a blowjob, I'll give you a promotion, rather than, hey, if you do some overtime, you can get a promotion. That is offensive, and it's abusive, and it's harassment,
Yeah. Yeah.
even if it's asked politely. So sex isn't just work. There's a danger when you regard sex as work. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
obviously it is. Obviously it has been for me and all that kind of stuff. But I think that the danger comes when you you stop seeing it as something meaningful and something sacred.
Yeah.
It ignores the fact that women, by and large, not all, but by and large, women require something more than the physical act to make sex enjoyable, that there needs to be a connection, and plenty of men
Mm-hmm.
that need that as well.
Mm-hmm.
There's this idea that you need to be able to just that a lot of that like meaningless sex is good sex. I don't know. I feel like I'm getting into a dangerous territory with a lot of people that are hard, that have a difficult time with that idea. It's just that by and large, the Lily Phillips and Bonnie Blues are rare in terms of what they're bringing home in terms of money.
Mm-hmm.
They're white. They're middle class, or at least appear kind of middle class, right? Just that, college educated, white, conventionally, like conform to these very typical beauty standards, right?
Yep.
It's unusual to go on to a porn platform and make the kind of money that they make, or even the kind of money I make, right? I don't make anywhere near to what they're making. Like I'm honestly probably, not whatever. But I did porn for so many years that I was able to amass a following on OnlyFans, and that's a lot of them. But what Bonnie Blue and Lily Phillips are managing to do is
Okay,
unusual.
so this is the dangerous territory, yeah. So this is the territory that I think is really interesting because we're talking about how in a way for me it's like, are we conflating permissiveness with progressiveness? Like,
Yes.
and so like the whole thing about, okay, let's talk, can you, if we want, we could it feels like we could talk about that interview you had with the like the whole sex positive thing where
It's dangerous.
it's so hard to talk about because we're not being prudes and saying
No.
like we need to abolish this stuff. We're trying to have a nuanced, complex conversation where it can easily get misconstrued as like shaming people, being conservative, right? I think we're trying to
Yeah.
say like going too far in the direction of permissiveness under the guise of inclusivity and progressiveness is kind of dangerous. It leaves you in this, I don't know, like an unthinking, unnuanced place of, because you're right. Like, what percentage of people in the sex industry are like you or like Lily and Bonnie Blue? Very few. Like, most are people who are working and have a pimp, or, right?
Yeah. No, it's the sex positive sex workers right activists tend to be, so they view, as Louise Perry puts it, they view their fellow sex workers as entrepreneurs, business minded folks that want to be kind of just left to do what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes up a very small percentage of sex workers.
Mm-hmm.
These women tend to be, have more resources. They tend to be more educated. They tend to be escorts, porn stars, OnlyFans creators like Lily and Bonnie. And it completely ignores the fact that there are young women, girls trafficked.
Mm-hmm.
They're maybe walking the streets. They have pimps. This is they're either there against their will, or they are there because they have no they don't see any other way out. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It's an immediate means to an end.
Right.
And so you can make the argument there's something very classist about this idea that
Yes.
there's any integrity to this, when it ignores the fact that a lot of these young women and girls they're brown, they're not white.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them are from foreign countries, you know trafficked into the States. And that also you run the risk of, when you destigmatize sex work, it kind of it opens up the door for a lot more terrible shit to happen, I guess. And again, I want to go back to when I was, talking about like women by and large need a connection. Like I'm really just speaking about myself. I can't speak for other people. I get so nervous with this stuff.
I
I get so
know.
nervous.
Well, we have
Um,
oxytocin at levels that men only have in their bodies after they have an orgasm. And oxytocin is like the bonding hormone. I hope I'm right about that statistic, but or that, scientific fact that I learned many years ago. But that shook me when I realized like biologically we are much more programmed for that kind of like bonding.
yeah.
And it's um, I get nervous about this too. It's a very scary territory we're stepping into, but you know, I can say that for myself. Like if you're a woman and you can get pregnant and you can have a baby that you have to take care of, it functionally it only works for you if you can have a partner to help you. Like it's like I just feel like that just makes so much sense just logically and functionally from like an evolutionary biology perspective and societal perspective, that you don't get left alone with the results of you know sexual activity, which is having a baby sometimes. Anyway, I just feel like it's like old, probably biological stuff, and we may be different from men in some ways. Like men can reproduce so much later in their lives, and maybe it was that there was a reason for that in terms of like growing the species. And there are differences, in I guess male desire and female desire. I don't know. I have not studied this, so I don't know what exactly they are. But I see the differences in my practice,
Yeah.
and in my relationships with men. But not all men, There are some men that don't. They're not as sexually driven. Anyway, okay, that's my rant. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, no, it's all right. I was just thinking, I'm reminded there was a director. He was a performer in the 70s, John Leslie, and then became a director and passed away in 2010. He had a stroke, but when he was directing, I worked for him a couple of times, and I really liked John. And he told me, he goes, he couldn't believe how often, performers were working, like daily, every single day, some of them, or like 20 days out of the month, you know. And, he was reflecting on how, back in the day, he was when he was a porn star, he was working maybe 4 days a month. And it was, back when they would make porn movies on film.
Mm-hmm.
They'd like close down city streets and all that, like treated like real movies, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, I can't imagine. He goes, it can't be healthy. It can't be healthy to be having this much sex with so many different people,
Mm-hmm.
And then he goes, and then the kind of porn, he goes, like, people are getting beat up in scenes. Like
Mm.
who's buying this? Like watching guys beat up girls in scenes.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, what's next? Where do we go from here?
Right. Snuff
And
films.
yeah, and I think about that. Like, where do we go from here? Now we've got essentially civilians, right? Like Lily and Bonnie, like doing these stunts and
Yeah.
and putting stuff out there. And it guess where it really I get concerned too is like so many young men and boys are watching these porn movies, and whether we like it or not, they're learning,
Yes.
and that's so easily accessible to them. And
Yes. Like no
my
guardrails.
oldest, yeah, my oldest son, when he was a sophomore in high school, told me that there was an image going around. I don't know if it was his school or a different school, of a girl 15 years old, with cum on her face.
Oh.
And I don't think it was like a revenge porn thing. I think it was the boy couldn't believe that he was allowed to do this or something like that. Like he just was, it was like, look, because again, we've normalized this, and we're saying that girls want this, right?
Yeah.
Girls want this. And then a lot of these girls are like, well, I want this. And it's translation. If I'm cool, I should do this,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's where really my concern comes in, is just the culture we're in now. And I know it sounds weird coming from a pornographer of like well over 20 years. Uh, I don't know. I don't know when it changed for me. Maybe it was because I became a mother. Maybe it's because I'm seeing these young people um, not not realizing or recognizing that that sex is it's a meaningful act,
Yeah.
and that there's consequences, and I go back to the quote, the occupational hazard of making a spectacle of yourself, is like essentially eventually you're going to buy a ticket and you're going to look
Yeah.
at the consequences of your actions. And that's where I am. I mean, I'm reflecting back, and I don't regret. It's a waste of time to regret. I mean, I this is the journey of my life, and I'm learning a lot from it. I think it enabled me to, in some ways, like be a better parent in a way, which I know sounds strange coming from like a porn star who has kids, but it's like I'm cautioning. It's like I'm still kind of working out what brought me into porn. You
Yeah.
know, it was not an easy, great childhood, but I've survived it. I've been fortunate. I've made some great friends in it, but it's an ugly and dangerous world. It's sort of like that thing. Like I always think, like, with porn, I'm like, it's like going through the Amazon and coming out alive. It's like,
Yeah.
I did it. I could have died. A lot of horrible things could have happened. I saw some horrible shit. I also
Yeah.
saw some pretty interesting, fascinating shit. I saw some beautiful things, as well. Hasn't been all bad, but I wouldn't recommend it to anyone because you might not survive it, you know.
Yes.
And 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 so that's the thing, I again, I'm not calling for an abolition of it. I think that's, again, I think we have a I'm a total free speech proponent. I just think that we need to get to a point where we don't need it, where we don't want it.
Right. It's like use your imagination, people. Or, I
Yeah,
don't
I know,
know.
right?
I mean, or make a tamer version. Like I'm one of those people that could totally get addicted to romance novels where I just
Sure.
love the moment of consummation of this like long this relationship that's so tense and there's so much, people, there are things we can do like erotica or like whatever, but does it have to be like somebody like screwing their stepmom, like
What is that about?
I know. But I just want to go back to the fact that you are like, I mean, I think this is okay. So I've known you for a long time. Um, like, I've always known you to be just a really thoughtful person and a person who cares about the world and who cares about other people and someone who thinks about things deeply. And it's just so, I just was struck when, I knew we were going to have this conversation, but I'm just, I feel so lucky that we have you to tell us more about this industry and your personal experience. Like I really want to hear, like, as we go along. I would love to hear more. If like the more you're willing to share, I think the better. I mean, as much as you're willing to share with people, because you don't hear many reports back from the industry that are nuanced. That I mean, I don't know. I'm not really listening, so I guess I can't really say that. But is that true? You think like there aren't many people, veterans of the industry, that come forward and really talk about some of the things we're talking about now?
I think that, not, I mean, there's the
Hmm.
formerly Rocco Reed. His name is Josh Broom, and he's actually a pastor.
Hmm.
And he talks about his experience and stuff. As far as women,
Hmm.
I don't know. I
Hmm.
mean, there certainly have been some people who have been in porn and then who come out and speak against it, but there's no one that I recognize.
I just think like
And
you're able to think about the world in a complex way, and um, like when we talk about it, it never feels like this defensive rejection. It's always like with curiosity, you know?
sure, and and when I say like I'm deeply conflicted and it's complicated because I never ever want to speak for anyone else.
Mm-hmm.
And I would and I, as a director, I have shot some scenes that were beautiful,
Mm-hmm.
where the people really seemed, I mean, actually I know that they were into each other. That just doesn't happen very often, and certainly for the mass amount that we produce,
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't happen. But of course, like, what's that say? A broken clock is right twice a day. Like you're
Mm-hmm.
going to have some stuff that really feels meaningful, and but I can count on one hand, in my 20 plus year long career, that has happened.
Yeah.
And certainly, there's the porn, I guess you could say, that I grew up with, in terms of that I came across, that is really fucking tame
Mm.
compared to what is made now. And what is made now is the shit I worry about.
Yeah.
And that's the shit that sells. And like, at the end of the day, this is a business. They're going to make what is selling,
Right. It's like a
because
race
at
to
the
the
end of the day, they
bottom.
want to make money.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so that is the thing. And then I know we could go on forever and stuff, but
I
we
know. And I want to hear, I know, and enough for another time. I just think it's so, like, I'm thinking just in terms of like what's needed for like for people to think of things in new ways, and like the book is really helpful in that, but also just you even sort of coming forward and saying, yeah, I did this thing and I'm conflicted about it, and like here's my perspective. It breaks through something, um, right? That sort of illusion that it's like it's all fine, right? Like sex work is work. Like it's, like Lily Phillips veneer, like I just like to do this. It just sort of, I don't know. It's sort of, God, what am I like working? It's like honest, you know? Um,
Yeah, I
I
guess the
yeah.
the fear that comes up for me,
Mm-hmm.
to bring it back to Lily and Bonnie,
Mm-hmm.
is that what they're putting forth is this idea that you can just go and you can do these things and you can make all this money. And it does send a frightening message, especially to a generation of girls that are growing up in hookup culture,
Yeah.
and are vulnerable, and stuff. Obviously, it depends on the kind of, you know it depends on a lot of other factors, but that does seem to be, I guess, the frightening message. If you've got a smartphone, and you're 18, you can sign up for OnlyFans, you know
Yeah.
and
And like that won't follow you
that's
around forever. Like it's like it won't shape you at all. It won't follow you around in any way psychologically or emotionally, or like actually by being on the internet forever. And right, that people aren't thinking or even able to really think when they see the money in their minds. Like they're not even able really to like think about their future selves and the impact of what they're doing now, on their lives 10 or 15 years from now. Is that kind of.
Yeah, it's funny. It's I was thinking about there's that quote. It's in Magnolia. We may be through with the past, but the past ain't through with us. Which I was like, where did that quote come
Mm,
from Magnolia? And it's attributed to Bergen Evans, who I found out is he was like an English professor. And the quote is, "We may be through with the past, but the past isn't through with us."
mm,
And essentially, you can go and you can do this thing, but nowadays, they're you can't get away from it, right?
right.
And that's where I am. That's kind of where I am. Like when I to this day, it doesn't matter what I post. I could post something really, really tame. In fact, I think I posted just some sort of clothed picture on X, and someone wrote in the replies, "Where are your tits?"
Mm-hmm.
And I did it. I have a very long storied pornographic career. Like I invited that just through my history, right?
Mm-hmm.
And and that's the thing. You go and you make an OnlyFans, and it's either successful or it's not, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's there.
Mm-hmm.
You look at these Girls Gone Wild chicks, that documentary about Joe Francis and Girls Gone Wild. And like one of them, she just flashed her tits. She was drunk. She didn't know any better, just once. And it has followed her for years and years and years.
Mm-hmm.
You can't get away from it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Lily and Bonnie making it look so effortless. Uh, and I'm not saying that, these girls would sign up for OnlyFans and then immediately, book 100 dudes to come over and run a train on them.
Mm-hmm.
But anything, you can't get away from it. And it's much more, has a much more, it's much more detrimental in terms of like, reputation for women than it is for men, as we know, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really, that was my first concern
Mm-hmm.
with seeing the stuff with Lily and Bonnie. No disrespect to them. Again, I they're clearly they're getting what they want now. Who
Yeah,
knows what
yeah.
the future holds for them, whether they will look back fondly on the multitude of used condoms strewn about their rooms, um, or if they're gonna regret it. I don't know. I know there's a lot of conservative folks that were really just, well, they're ruined now. They'll never find love, and I'm like, nah, I found love. It happens. Riley Reid found love. Like it.
Totally.
Yeah, that's not. It's don't no. That's not necessarily true.
And
But
I
that
love,
doesn't mean that they're not, putting themselves in other types of danger, or that, they may want to have a complete career change and then not be able to. So,
totally.
yeah, but all
Like I
that to
love
say,
Lily Phillips. I think she's so cute. I really like want to give her a hug. Like I'm like she seems. Yeah. I don't want to. I'm not judging at all. And
no.
actually, part of me is like, if you're gonna do it, this is the way to do it. Then you don't. You have control over who you're sleeping with. You have, all the control over everything.
Yeah,
Um,
that where that worries me though is like, when is it enough money?
right.
When is it enough? Because after the 100 fellas, or even before then, she'd already made a fortune before then, and then it became 100, and then it was going to be 1,000, and
Yes.
it's what's the next stunt? Like, when is it enough? That's where it worries me. And there's the I always go back to this too, that it's that money is it's a terrible drug.
Yeah.
So that's the thing with that. But yeah, no, they both seem, well, Bonnie, I don't know. She does seem a little mean, but I know that's probably her image.
Yeah. Total
But Lily
act.
for sure just seems like, she genuinely seems like a nice girl, and we can talk some other time about how I feel about her fucking parents, but uh
Yeah. We have so
that's
much more to talk about with this. There's so many things that we talked about before we started recording that we haven't
yeah.
even gotten to, and it's just a huge. It's a huge conversation. about evolution of our culture and society and
We can certainly get
technology.
back to it
Yeah,
because this ties into also this idea about, AI bots and intimacy and
girlfriends.
and robot girlfriends and boyfriends and stuff. So we'll it's always going to come back around. There's
Yes.
so much to say because it's all tied in.
Yeah. Well,
But I think we've spoken enough for today.
yeah. And it was, yeah. Shall we do our exit, or do you have
Yes.
anything else you want to say, or no?
But no, I'm glad we had this conversation, and I've got so much that I'm sort of grappling with now, but I'm glad we had this, and I'll let you kind of see us out.
Okay. I just also, I'm just like, so, I don't know. Like, you and I are friends, so we talk
Yes.
about this stuff all the time, but there's just something, like I said it before, I just think it's really like, it takes a lot of courage just to come out and be real, about, and so I just want to name that. And yeah. And okay, here we go. We
Thank
are.
you.
Yeah, Tim's like, Shannon, you really need to tighten up the ending when you give your social media. Yeah, he's like on my ass all the time. He's like, Shannon, you want to talk about the podcast? You want to talk about the podcast? I'm like, no. Just, oh, by the way, you have to watch the Fox Hollow Farms
I'm
documentary.
terrified. I saw the trailer for it, but
Dude,
yes.
you will not believe the twists and turns.
Okay, I will watch it tonight.
Oh my God, you have to tell me because I was so shocked. Okay, anyway, thank you so much for listening. We are so grateful that you are listening to us and that you have, uh, you know, liking us and subscribing and rating and reviewing. And please, if you like our podcast, please feel free to leave us a review on whatever platform you're listening on. And if you have, questions or corrections, or, something we said you don't agree with or pissed you off, you can always send us an email and we happy to respond. So you can find us mostly on Instagram at Secret Passage Podcast, and you can listen to us on all the platforms, most of the platforms. And I think that's it.
Yep.
Okay, thanks for listening.
See you next week.